Right. Good evening. This is Plain Talk. I am Phillip Edward Alexander, joined as usual in PEP Studios by a panel capable of having a conversation on the issue of the day. Last week we did a show called Food Production as a Means to Economic Diversification. Today we're doing tourism as a means to economic diversification. As we go along, since with the advent of the launch of the Progressive Empowerment Party, the latest narrative or response to the narrative we've been hearing is that we've heard promises before. And that's true. You've heard 57 years of promises before. What you've not heard are plans, policies, programs broken down into detail that could show you the who, what, when, where, why, and how to make these promises materialize. But we're doing that in a series of shows. Right now we're talking about diversifying the economy because our current Prime Minister thinks it's impossible. So we want to show him he's wrong. And we want to show you what you're entitled to as we work to promote the idea that Trinidad and Tobago needs a GDP 20 times the GDP that we have now. To get to there, we are going to need to broaden our income streams on a national level. When we come back, you'll meet our guests and we get down into the conversation.
Good evening, Trinidad.
Sean Sunarayan, Deputy Chair and a cruise industry professional.
Good evening.
Michelle Davis, she is the Deputy Party Organizer and also a cruise industry professional.
Good evening.
And Stephen Broadbridge, a tourism industry professional and owner of Caribbean Discovery Tours.
Thank you.
Right, so I hope that we could get a piece of the conversation that we had before we came on air, because it was really vibrant, the exchange, talking about the value of tourism to the global economy. And that is the topic we need to be paying attention to. Trinidad and Tobago, for example, using Carnival, which is our main driver. Let's put some stuff in perspective, because there are three other carnivals that are greater shows than the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival. The information I have, Brazil Carnival generated revenue of 6.8% higher than that of its own carnival in 2017, created 72,000 jobs, and 3.2 billion injected 3.2 billion US dollars into the Brazilian economy for the 2 weeks of Carnival. According to a 2015 study conducted by Tulane economic professor Tony Weiss, the 2014 Carnival season in New Orleans had a direct economic impact of $164 million on the Mardi Gras as a result of the Mardi Gras Street Festival. But her study also found that the year-round impact, both direct and indirect, of the Mardi Gras brand was $465 million US dollars. Caribana says there's even more reason to boast for the latest kid on the block. Caribana is putting big money where its mouth is, $438 million. That's how much US. That's how much the festival injected into Ontario's economy last year. Most of which was plowed directly into the economy. Now, when you look at the fact that Trinidad and Tobago, our version of Carnival, because remember, we are the greatest show on earth, according to our Central Statistical Office, 2017, we got 37,000 visitors to the island specifically for Carnival, and they spent an average 50 million US. Contrast and compare that with the other shows around the world. Toronto, that brings millions of visitors. Caribana, that brings millions of visitors to Toronto. It puts it into stark relief how far we are from monetizing tourism. Before we get into the actual conversation about tourism, I wanted to also put into the conversation and to bring Sean and Michelle into this quickly, because this is about, actually this is tourism numbers, so Stephen, you could join this as well. The United States currently is the number one earning from tourism country in the world, and they earn 244 billion US dollars on tourism. And China is at number 7 with 44 billion US. India is not on that list. And I'm telling you that because the projected 10 largest travel and tourism economies by 2028 is expected to be China at number 1 with 1,293 billion, but the United States relegated to second at 404, which is 100% increase in what they're doing now.
Correct.
And India in at number 3 at $240 billion US. This is the kind of money that tourism could generate to an economy. And we're talking about diversifying our economy. Why we're not paying attention to tourism when it's so obviously the way we need to move forward? Anybody?
Well, the rest of the Caribbean has experienced, as of last year, an increase. Some islands, as much as Barbados, I believe, 23% increase in tourism, and Trinidad has experienced a decline. A decline in the past 2 years. We're down to 394,000 arrivals, based on from 2015 we had 434,000. So you think about that. What direction are we headed? Why are we on the decline and the rest of the region is on the upcline? And using the resources that they have available, because as Sean and I were speaking prior to the show, there's not too much resources required for the tourism arrivals. There's infrastructure that is required, but some ships, if you see where they dock, minimal infrastructure, as Sean and I were indicating, tendering, and there's no infrastructure or investment required from the government at hand. So money simply cannot be the issue of why we're not doing it.
I should put this to you.
Right.
Even if money was the issue, I want to draw to your frame of reference that when we needed parking for Port of Spain, the private sector, through the Furnace group of companies, were the ones that built the major parking
right,
multi-story parking facility that is available. And I use that as an example because there's a lot of private sector money in Trinidad that could be used to create infrastructure if we wanted to, in partnership with government. But there's a lot of international money available as well. People want investment.
But of course, and once you, as for the cruise line industry in particular, once you establish a relationship with the cruise lines, they're at the point where they're building terminals.
Correct.
In these countries.
They're putting out the money.
They're putting out the money. In Turks and Caicos, Carnival has, I think it's Turks and Caicos Carnival has built. Royal Caribbean are building the terminals.
So we don't even need to put out the money.
So there's no investment
Just
required
roll out
from
the
the
carpet.
country. Just roll out the carpet and keep it safe.
So why are we not rolling out the carpet, John?
That's a good question, because even in Cuba, one of the things that Obama did just before he left office was open up the cruise industry. Before, he needed a license to literally cruise between the United States and Cuba, and he did away with that. Only when Trump came back in, he reimposed those sanctions. But in between that time, all the major cruise players were buying up land for terminals, as well as even the hotels. Places like Marriott, Hilton, Holiday Inn, Hyatt, they were buying all the beachfront property they could get.
The government says that tourism does not impact the national economy, that people stay on the boat. But I got some information that says that just having the ships dock in your country puts, and this is a global number, just having cruise ships dock in port generates for the countries a total of 61 billion US dollars.
Correct.
And that's just people, I guess, coming off the boat to spend money on knickknacks and
supporting local businesses, supporting when a ship docks, the operation of what is required is you are pumping money into the local economy. We use the local vendors, berthing fees, tax fees, but you're also contributing because you're purchasing local items. Sean and I were talking, one of the ships had an the machine broke down, and the vendor, a local vendor, was able to substantiate a contract through supplying ice to the cruise ship.
Bring Stephen into the conversation. Stephen, what's your views?
Well, I was actually not coming into the conversation because I didn't want to sound over negative so early o'clock. But my personal view is I don't like cruise ships. I don't like cruise ships. I don't like how they do business. I don't like how they behave, the owners of the cruise ships. I don't like how they pollute. Look at the internet, how many times you've seen cruise ships have been caught dumping rubbish in the ocean, and they're not nice people to business. I've done business with them.
Absolutely. But what I want to say to you is this, right? As you look to jumpstart the tourist industry in the country, the fastest way to bring people to the country is through cruise ships. Now, you could establish rules and laws in your country that they can't, if they violate, they get fined.
I think you all should research a bit more about the past experiences with our negotiations. And fair enough, the governments before have not done very good negotiating, but neither has CARICOM. CARICOM tried to impose a cost of a head charge for guests coming ashore, because we had some islands in the Caribbean that the cruise ship would arrive, they would boat everybody ashore because there was no docking facility. They'd arrive on the beach, they'd leave their rubbish, they'd use the toilet, water supply, and they'd be back on it. They'd bring a lunch from the boat, and these little islands have very little resource, so they have to deal with all the solid waste that's left behind and everything. And the people back on the boat, and they made very little money, and that's what started the conversation. No, the facilities were available,
and we have to bring them by boat to the shore.
We're talking about toilet facilities and other facilities, the ones that cost money to the island. And what happened was, it was a conversation with CARICOM, and during the conversation, it was agreed that a head charge would be
for cleanup.
Would be charged to the ships.
For cleanup
and the
and
ships'
stuff.
response to that wasn't okay, we'll think and negotiate or whatever. They said, no, you first person that charges us, we're out of here. And all the CARICOM countries all collapsed, and none of them stuck to the head charge. That's how they do. They're willing to pay those head charges in the Mediterranean and all that, but they don't respect the Caribbean.
They don't respect the Caribbean. Is
No.
it because the Caribbean has such little respect for itself?
Very likely, but the point is, I like doing business with people with a little more corporate responsibility that don't dump tons of rubbish
How
in the
long
ocean.
ago was that?
When they last dumped rubbish in the ocean? That was a month ago.
No, that experience with CARICOM when it collapsed with the
I don't know. I don't even.
decade,
I
more
don't,
than a decade.
I honestly don't pay too much mind to what governments are doing
The
right
fastest
now, because
growing tourist market in the world is cruise tourism. So maybe, and I want to say this with respect, because what you're introducing to the conversation, I want to go on to research. I don't know if Tony will be able to help us with that. I mean, if we're talking about destinations are important to the cruise industry, and the tropical destinations are back in fashion now. So why wouldn't we be able to establish, because if we're talking...
But why wouldn't we go the way that the people who have been in this industry for a long time, that no government seems to want to talk to, because we don't get enough dialogue going with the actual stakeholders. If you don't have conversation with the stakeholders, by the way, and there's no buy-in, whatever you're going to do isn't going to work out too well. So you have to have buy-in from conversation
have to get a
with the
team
stakeholders.
together.
People that are actually in the business.
That understand the business.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you look at what could happen with just exploring niche markets, do you really think that we could, even if we could, which I have my doubts, if we could suddenly have mass tourism, because that's what we're talking about, cruise ships coming in, and quick money is mass tourism. that could do some damage as well to your country. I'm not a fan of mass tourism. I'm into going after niche markets like ecotourism, investing money in that.
This is what
and
you
having,
do now.
That's what,
Yes.
but
That's what Caribbean Discovery Tours basically does now.
yeah, and I've been successful with some university groups. I brought university groups to do research. I've not had the
But
support.
there's a cathedral in France that got more tourists last year than we've gotten since China has been independent. And that's a cathedral. So why can't we manage?
And they-
Because I'm sure
because-
they're not
because
destroying
we
the
have no
cathedral.
marketing support.
Absolutely, and I understand that. So when you say that you don't support mass tourism, I want to put that in inverted commas or even brackets, because we need to diversify this economy. And I want to tell you something. Your position noted.
Let me explain.
Do you
one of the
agree?
problems
I'll
I
answer
have with
one
mass
question.
tourism.
Do you agree that with proper systems in place to manage it, a lot of the fallout that you disagree with could be mitigated?
Are we talking about which fallout? The pollution or the
Whatever
destruction of-
requires mitigation to make it functional to the nation, generate revenue without damaging the country.
I would like to generate money to the country, and I'm not talking about physical damage. I'm talking about damage to, like, let's say, I'll give you an example, and this is a very vague example, but let's say, I've seen this before because we've dealt with cruise ships, and you have somebody come off a cruise ship, and you ask them if you want to try some doubles or roti. A lot of now there are different size cruise ships. There are the smaller ones that are more. They have a different type of people.
Yeah.
But the large ones selling the discount holidays, you get these people and you ask them if you want to try doubles. They say no. You want a roti? No. Hamburger? Yes. So now let's say a little man is selling doubles on the side of the road. I'm just talking very loosely here, but let's say that he is selling doubles for years, and that's our culture. But 1,000 people come to him every day and say, "I have a hamburger," and he says no. And they go to the next
Yeah,
person.
but Stephen,
He's going to stop selling doubles
I
and start selling
understand.
hamburgers.
Yeah, but I understand that. But why are we then not? You just said that there are different types of cruises. Sean, is that correct? That there are different types of cruises that
Yeah.
you could bring.
And we're talking about
that
the smaller ones, and I'm afraid you're talking about the big ones because you
Listen.
said you want. We're talking about.
If we can get mass numbers in small boats that helps the doubles and the roti vendors, I all for that. Sean, give us some numbers.
Okay, I like to compare Trinidad, Tobago. Let's use Tobago, forget Trinidad. I like to compare Tobago in terms of tourism to Dominica, in terms of size, population, that kind of thing, right? And it's interesting that you mentioned ecotourism just now, because a large percentage of Dominica's income comes from ecotourism. And a large percentage of those people that come down there for the ecotourism, part of it comes off the big ships. They literally come there for that. They would do St. Kitts, Nevis, Antigua, St. Lucia. They do on a 10-day run. They would do those things, 10, 15 days, depending on the package that you take. And it ties in with what you're saying, but I'm seeing it from the opposite side, because Dominica has managed to they've managed to leverage that to their advantage in terms of doing the eco hikes, the bird thingies, as well as, interestingly enough, Dominica's food supply far outstrips what they supply to locals, simply because they get into their agri sector is directly linked to cruise ship arrivals. Cruise ship arrivals is 6 times the population of Dominica, and they go wild for the food across it. What we call blue food across it. Tourists go crazy for it. So I'm not reconciling. I'm not saying it's different in some places, but I'm not reconciling the doubles guy and the hamburger guy, especially when it's been proven in a place
I wasn't
like
talking
Dominica.
specific. I was using an
As an
untested
example.
example.
Yes.
I'm talking
Right.
about washing out one's culture.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I'm
But then-
very afraid if you have more tourists than
Yeah.
locals. I don't
I-
like that idea at all.
Okay, but I
No
also
matter-
want to tell you that Tate and Lyle introduced a culture that is doubles and pilori by paying people in oil and split peas. The reality of our situation is tourism, if it does not take to our culture, does not necessarily make our culture go away. I am sure that there are meals served on the boats for the crew that has nothing to do with the guests.
Correct.
All I'm saying is we could manage our target, and we don't have to stay focused on this, especially from your angle. But he just said if the Dominica economy, what he just said, 6 times.
Yeah. They had on a yearly basis, it's 6 times.
6 million people on the ground.
Yeah.
yearly. into the Dominican Republic.
Right.
6
And-
million people.
And from that, 500,000 of those are cruise ship passengers.
But just look at Jamaica, and in terms of retaining your culture,
Yeah.
when the Jamaica is known for their marketing of culture.
Correct.
When you get off the ship, the first thing you want in Jamaica, Sean and I could vouch for that, coming from the cruise ship environment, is jerk chicken.
Ackee
I
and
told
saltfish too.
Ackee and saltfish.
And
Where
what's the different types of ships with different types of people on them?
no, we're talking about the large ship, but I think what we're trying to focus here on is the dire need of this country to diversify the economy,
Right.
and we have to find other ways
So I
because
think
we are
Stephen is correct
we are
in
shrinking.
raising-
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I am
agreed.
happy that he's raising all of the issues. He wants to say, look out for these
Correct,
things
correct.
as you're opening
Once-
back a tourist industry.
Correct.
But if we could get these kind of numbers, 6 million people on the ground, Dominican Republic.
For
Yeah, but
starters,
what-
for
what
starters
is-
if you get 6 million, you think we have bad traffic jam now? Where are they
Well,
going?
No. You see, that I
That's-
want to talk to you about because
that's another
Do we have the
infrastructure.
infrastructure?
No, we don't have the infrastructure. But Stephen, we didn't have the infrastructure to build the water park in Chagaramas.
No.
We didn't have it.
No.
They've built industry in Chagaramas to now talk about building a causeway as an after the fact. We literally, that's how we do business in Trinidad and Tobago. Shock. We create a situation where it causes a problem and then we solve the problem.
Shock
But
doctrine. Shock doctrine.
Shock
Shock
doctrine. And that's a fact. Because now it's not just fluke tag. Now it's not just carnival. Now we've created a monster in Chagaramas that generates traffic to the complete stress of the people living in Carnage so that Bayshore could close their gates. But we've not, we literally put the cart before the horse. So I'm saying that I like that you're raising these issues, but I want to hear these numbers because if we get a target to shoot at, surely we could put things in place to aim for that target and not destroy the country.
And the targets are good, but some targets can be pie in the sky as well. I mean, thinking that you can suddenly do this and all of them will
Oh,
arrive.
no.
No,
The
no,
numbers-
no,
the numbers we're shooting at you here is like Dominica. I mean, Dominica since
Which is different than the Dominican Republic he's talking about
Correct.
for those who don't
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
definitely right. Those numbers didn't come about by guess. This is an industry just like every other tourist destination. This is an industry that was built
over time.
and I don't want to say perfected, but serious effort has gone into in terms of attracting not just investors but attracting the people that own these cruise lines. You know,
So
for
we
instance,
can learn what they're doing.
Well, the government are they're the ones who are taking direct interest in it.
Listen,
because they're the
yeah.
ones that's wanting to have that level of diversification. They don't have oil. They don't have half or if any of the resources that we have as a nation.
Correct.
So they have to put the focus where tourism is concerned.
Correct.
And the same point that you brought up before is very, very valid.
Yeah.
And I think in our minds, because again, Phillip and the team that's been developing these policies, especially where diversification of the economy is concerned, having to bring in tourism. Again, what you mentioned is definite points that we are looking into.
Stephen Broadbridge, and the reason he is the first person to recall when we thought we were going to do tourism as a means to economic diversification. He is one of the most outspoken stakeholders. He
Right.
would get involved and raise issues and promote it. So we need people like Stephen
That's
on
right,
board.
that's right.
So I don't want you to think that this is a whitewash of a policy. We are in the conversation stage, but success leaves clues.
Yeah.
Stephen, give me some of your numbers. I want to know.
Well-
You were talking about the Dominican Republic, and I want to hear that number.
So you have the most visited islands in the Caribbean, where you have Dominican Republic as number one. It's over
How much,
6.
have you got figures to how much was spent on each visitor that arrived as well?
Yeah,
Because
we
that's
approximately
another
8,000
thing, $8,000 per visitor.
per visitor. Yes.
US or
That would be US dollars. That's them overstaying a period of I think it's
so that's
48 hours or
$48 billion.
something. Yes.
US.
Wait, you're saying that each passenger spent
On
how much?
average.
On
8,000.
average.
8,000
$8,000.
US.
That's the quality of passengers, of arrivals they get. When you
That's
look
not
at
the
This
kind
is
of people-
paraphernalia,
that's not the
this
kind
is
that I would-
food,
that's-
this is...
that we would get.
That's not the no. I didn't say that. I said that's not our experience in the cruises.
Stephen,
Right.
so
what
far.
has been
The
our
Royal Caribbean and
experience?
people like that. That's not the
No,
experience.
but our tourism has been aimed at Trinidadians living abroad. That's the most tourist
yes.
arrivals we get. We got 33,000 people last year. Of the 650,000 in diaspora
For
outside.
starters, we have not had any marketing whatsoever. So
But
when you say that,
I like
the
that.
tourist
Wait a
company
minute.
just
there
collapsed.
is no
Hold on.
marketing.
The point that you just
at all.
brought up there, talking about the $8,000 being spent, you have to understand too, these governments and systems on the ground are insistent on directing the tourists to areas and bodies that is forcing them to basically spend money, such as your trinkets, such as unique food, and whatever else that they are actually, whether it be the tours. So the point is that the same thing that you're talking about. You're wondering why it is our visitors here aren't spending that kind of money because we don't have these
Yeah, but
actual
Tony,
systems.
I just want to say this, Stephen. How could we, when the board of the tourism company, we hired Penny Commission and we made her the chairman of the board, and then they hired an unqualified CEO who has no idea about tourism,
Correct.
and they put her in the job,
Correct.
and then the whole thing fall apart in a mess. How are we taking it seriously when we have no clue where we're trying to go as a nation?
That's right.
Because we manage without knowledge here.
Yeah.
We manage without experience. When I
That is
came,
jobs for the boys. Put in
Right.
an unqualified CEO who you move her from being the person in charge of selling phones and be mobile, and you make her the CEO of the nation's tourism industry.
Right.
And she admitted,
Right.
that she doesn't know what she's doing in that, and they
my
did
experience with boards and directors of boards, they what
jobs
they
for the
don't
boys.
know. They don't actually have to know a hell of a lot about what they are doing. What they have to know is how to secure professionals and how to take advice. And that may be a problem. And then, of course, even if you get the most perfect minister and he is a board member and board director who can source out the expertise and knows how to, a board of director you don't micromanage, you macromanage everything. So you tell
But
people,
they are guided.
but you
They are
you
guided
have
by
to
targets.
be guided by professionals.
No, but you're guided by targets. You want to say at the start, you are government. If you are the minister, we shouldn't even have a minister of tourism. We should have a secretary of tourism under the Ministry of Finance. But that person should outline a plan for cabinet. And I just want to say
But I wanted
this.
to get to the whole problem though,
Go ahead.
because yes, okay, it's nice to have people with some experience, but more important than having experience, because I've seen board directors.
I don't
of
care about
boards,
the board. I talk
I
about the
say
CEO.
the CEO and all of that.
The chief executive officer
has to know about
has to know the
tourism, but they
business.
still can connect with the right professionals and speak to stakeholders and speak to professionals.
Stephen, at what
But-
point do you
but-
get somebody
but I'm not
who
finished.
actually...
I'm not finished. I'm saying that even if you got that person, if the ministry does not allocate any funds, it doesn't make a damn difference.
Then I agree with you
So
again, but I
nobody
want to
you
say
could
to you
have
the
put in there
whole
would have
plan.
made a difference,
Michelle
'cause
was
no money
saying,
is ever
Michelle
going
was
there.
saying end-to-end planning. We're talking about hire somebody who understands the industry, come to the cabinet, come to the parliament, come to the people and say, we're aiming at
Correct.
50 million US
Yeah.
for
Sure.
Carnival,
Running
and
for
that this is how we intend to do it, because we have so much rooms and so many cruise ships that we bring into whatever. We need a plan, and we need people capable of carrying out that plan. Do you agree with that?
I agree. You need a plan, of course. Everybody would agree. But after you've got a plan, you have to have a government that is willing to invest in that. plan.
Did you know what the
That's
tourism?
never happened.
Do
Never.
you know what the tourism plan was as a stakeholder when that board was appointed, when that CEO was appointed? Are you aware of the plan?
I'm aware of numerous plans. There were ones written by the countless ones. I don't know why we do this all the time. We hire in some person to write a tourism master plan or something, and then we completely ignore it after we spend millions of dollars on all these reports and all that. There's never any good, well intention. I mean, it's always
There's
sort of
never
lip
any
service.
manifestation.
They say, "Oh, we're doing this plan," and then
Right.
but there's no money behind it.
Exactly.
There's
Exactly.
no.
Let me give it-
So it doesn't matter who you have as a director of a board, because that's all, or a
The
CEO,
point I
because
was
they don't
raising,
do anything.
no. The point, I'm coming back to you now, Sean, but the point I was raising about the board and the CEO is there's more information in the public space about the board and the CEO and none about what we were trying to do.
Yeah, where they're going at. Listen, everybody, and this comes down to even small islands, little islands, St. Kitts, Nevis. I'm talking about the little guys here. If they can do it with a very limited budget, because their budget is nothing near ours. The money if we wanted to put into tourism, we could put into it, would probably be to the extent, I'm fairly certain, probably the entire budget of St. Kitts and Nevis, if we were really serious about it. We are so lackadaisical about tourism. It's not funny. In Europe, there are these things. Michelle would know this. There are these things they call tourism fairs, right? Where countries would come together and have these big fairs about marketing, literally marketing the country. Come here, see this. Come to Paris, see the Eiffel Tower. We have the scene, blah 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 blah. And everyone has a booth, and the booths are nicely laid out, beautifully set up. I mean, they probably get architects, designers to come inside and see about their booths. They spend money on it. Now, you will never, not once have I seen it, where you walk into one of those fairs and Trinidad is probably one of the top 10 that you'd walk past as you walk in. You look for Trinidad, it's all the way down in the back. And then
Well, it's
you're gonna
taken
see-
very lightly, yeah?
What was that
And then-
fair? What was that street fair that took place in Canada this week gone here? Or was it New York City? Where was it that our team... some jam,
Yeah.
Fester.
But there was nothing from Trinidad.
No, there
nothing. There
wasn't.
was a progressive
wasn't.
empowerment party
Yeah,
booth.
that's
but
in
there
New
was-
York.
New York
Correct.
City. But
Correct.
there was nothing from Trinidad.
Correct.
And the number one source of Trinidad tourists is
Yeah.
the United States of America.
Tourism is an afterthought. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Tourism is an afterthought
Is it
in
bastard
terms
child?
of.
Master child is a better
It's
wanna-
something
Yeah.
Trinidad does not want to admit
Yeah.
that we need, because we
Correct.
were an oil-rich nation, and
that's small money.
That's it.
you look at ecotourism is
Everybody-
number one
everybody
in
watching
your
the show,
area. Is
everybody watching-
worldwide ecotourism.
Yeah.
Everybody watching
That's
the
the
show,
big
when you
news.
said what you just said, everybody heard in their mind, Massa Day done.
Right. Ecotourism, you look at Costa Rica.
Yeah.
If you have been to Costa Rica, it is like going to Trinidad.
Correct.
Literally.
Yeah.
It is where the ship docks is literally this country area.
Yeah.
And ecotourism drives Costa Rica. Right now, Costa Rica, just to show you how way ahead, 365 days of the year, they're operating off renewable energy because of this whole eco-tourism
They've
friendly.
also banned hunting.
Right. Why aren't we in this direction?
Correct.
Right? We don't want to admit we need tourism.
And that's it. I mean,
when we
what
are
else-
drowning, but we don't want to
How
admit
do we
we're
come back?
above this
And
right
we're
now.
so
Michelle,
well endowed. We're so Tobago. Forget Trinidad.
Yes, exactly.
Take Tobago. Combine Costa Rica. Combine all the islands together, and they don't have
What's a big one?
what Tobago has in terms of being
And Tobago
endowed.
doesn't have a fraction of what Trinidad has.
Exactly.
Attitude.
I mean,
Exactly.
Apparently swamp 40 square miles
The-
of the best mangrove in the
Yeah.
world.
Besides the fact,
the river
yeah.
swamp.
besides the fact that we're killing the visitors and raping them and robbing them,
No, we're not
the,
actually.
the
We
attitude,
are doing that to ourselves.
the-
We
but we do to the visitors
The
too.
visitors have actually, I have to correct you, because in Trinidad we're looking at a crime against foreigners, and it's actually not that big in comparison to some other places. Crime against our own.
If I knew, I would have that number. In fact, I might still bring it up, but I want to ask you a question. Our attitude in the service industry. How do you think
Correct.
foreigners? I have seen videos
Correct.
of people in Trinidad KFC from abroad being abused by people in the line. They don't understand.
Let me tell you something. I have been in this for 20-something years, and yes, there's awful service in some areas, but I have to say, in my ecotourism, I get them out of here. When they go into the country areas, they're treated like kings and queens. They're
Absolutely.
treated wonderfully. That's why I
Absolutely.
love ecotourism, because we're going to people that are treating them well.
And that is
the other thing
wonderful in
you know,
isolation.
You know the only negative we cannot avoid? They are treated terrible in the airport. That's
Immigration.
If
That's-
when I look at the
that's
comments
part of
from
the
my
course.
guests, my guest said,
That's-
"Wow, the people were so warm. What
Man.
lovely people." Except and then they say, "Except for those people at the airport."
Listen,
First
coming
impression.
through that culture, and that pisses me off no end. Because every single time I do a rotation and come back here, I think I put it in one of my Facebook posts. Every time I do a rotation and came back inside, you're walking through that corridor, that dark dungeon, to get to immigration is depressing. Go to any other country. I mean, oh God, Miami, that has plenty of nothing except parties going on. You know, immigration, the airport actually functions. It doesn't look like
But
a decrepit
even
piece of nonsense.
Even be more worse than that. is how they're spoken to by the
Yes.
immigration
Yes,
officers.
but this is what I'm saying. When you get inside,
battered and abused
Okay,
by
but you
the
picking and choosing, but I'm saying that our attitude as a people since Massa Day was done,
It
was introduced
sucks.
into our psyche, was that these foreigners don't deserve our respect.
Yes.
And there are
Correct.
countries, Mexico, treats their visitors with so much love and respect that they have now gotten to 6 and 7-star resorts beyond 5 stars.
yeah.
There are professionals in Mexico, architects, engineers, doctors, lawyers who prefer to work in the tourism industry. They make hundreds of thousands of dollars in tips, a much
the
better
training
lifestyle.
is very
The training,
top line.
exactly.
But despite
exactly-
the training,
exactly-
but despite the training, because immigration has gone through
No,
recently.
they're having a dispute. It's actually we actually investigated why our guests were being abused in there, and it was not accidental. It was the immigration on something of a strike. You know, it's more of a
It's
They've been
more of an
working
interrogation
for 10
when you land in
years.
Trinidad. It's
We've been
more of
watching
an
those videos.
interrogation of why are you here? Whereas you go
You
to
do not
any
feel
other place,
like
you are
visiting
welcomed.
a warm,
Correct.
tourist-friendly destination.
Absolutely not.
It looks like we think
Correct.
that you're trying to invade our nation.
Yes.
Do you?
Yes.
there's no welcoming feeling.
No,
in there.
No, there's nothing
comes
good.
out of Piarco Airport
Feeling
enjoying that experience.
No.
I just want to bring one example. As I made a trip to Barbados a couple of years ago, and to show, and this was around the crop over period as well, and just simply to show how the systems that the government in itself has put in place for that period of time of the year. I'm talking about the time I touched down till I got to the hotel. We had 2 stops. I spent $200 US
Yes.
before I even got into the bloody hotel. My point is that as you come out into the airport, you have all these little trays, samples. They're exposing you to their rum, which is I think is Mount
Correct.
Gay
Yes.
rum. They have this distillery, spice rum, and all these different host of things. And it's enticing me. I want to spend. Hey, I like that XO rum. Let me
But
have a
of
bottle of
course.
that. That's $40 US right there. You know, I saw a meal, a fish that was unbelievable. The presentation of this bloody thing.
Yes.
And they're telling me, well, you know, you can have it at so and so price. Yes, okay, I'm going to the hotel. I'm going to have that. I'm telling you, before even getting to the hotel, here I am. As a Trinidadian, not even an American, 7 to 1 is
love
the
with
exchange.
Barbados. And you're happy.
I am very happy. Very, very happy.
They already put you in a posture that you are on vacation.
This is it.
We are here to serve you. Your
That's right.
happiness is
That's
important.
right.
That when you leave, and marketing professionals tell you this, a lot of money spent, especially automotive industry, on the people who have already chosen a brand to make sure that you are happy with your choice, that you will come here again, that you will go home because they know that the best advertising in the world is word of mouth. It's me saying, Lord boy, that trip to Trinidad, post on Facebook, I can't wait to go.
Cruise.
But
You
let's
know,
talk
There
about
we have another. Sorry, before I
no.
go off that point, they have another something I'd like to raise that I have experienced countless times. And in fact, as recently as a week ago, I had some guests that came to do ecotourism. They did a few tours in the river swamp and so on. And when they were leaving, they were telling me on the last day, they said, we're so glad we didn't listen to our co-worker. And I said, what do you mean? I said, their co-worker, a Trinidadian, told them, don't go there. Dangerous, horrible country, nasty. I have that
But
all
Stephen,
the
what?
time.
Yeah, but what?
All the time.
But
Our
Stephen,
nationals
Stephen,
living abroad
no, you
are,
can't.
are doing it.
No,
They're
but-
doing it all the time. I
Yeah,
am
but
not
Stephen,
asking,
I am
telling you
saying
I'm
to
hearing
Trinidad and
it.
Tobago right now needs to put out a warning to tourists. We need to say, come here at your risk, and you know that's a fact. We do not operate this country properly. And that's a whole other
I
conversation.
agree with you that they don't have to, but I say
I don't
come
want
he-
tourists
come here
walking
with a
in
risk.
here thinking it's a Pollyanna country.
I have had in 20 years, touch wood and all that. I have had not one visitor be.
But you don't leave your visitors in the system.
Correct.
Your system, your
And they-
your
and they're
visitors.
out of here. They don't sing for the
exactly.
train.
You pick up your visitors in the airport. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So you take them from there, and you are responsible for them until you put them back
And
on
I
the
do
plane.
not put them in harm's way.
Exactly. But to the Pollyannas stepping off the plane way in the tropics,
Correct.
people don't know if you are driving through Maraval on the way to Highland Park. I'm saying this. If you drive and you leave Victoria Gardens going to visit people in some other middle class area, but you have to pass Saganga and La Puerta between Goodwood Gardens, You don't know that you turn one street wrong and you're in danger in Trinidad and Tobago.
But Philip, what is to be noted with the cruise ships in particular? What they do is they have recommended tours. Sean can vouch for that.
Yes, ma'am.
So they recommend you're
Correct.
you're on a ship 6,000 people. The cruise ship recommends
Correct.
tour operators
This
such
is
as
it.
Stephen.
Yeah. This is
So
it.
they are
Correct.
in Stephen's care
That's
during.
right.
They're not
Those guys are-
wandering the.
Yeah.
So therefore, the reason I say crime, yes, we have a crime problem and we know that. But look at Jamaica. Tourists
Correct.
kept coming to
Jamaica,
Jamaica
yeah.
during the worst time of their
Rwanda,
of arrival.
Rwanda right
Right.
now is the #1 tourist destination for the very wealthy. Colombia is supposed to be the kill capital of the
I think a
world.
kidnapping a day or something like that.
Right. So, if you are managing your tourism industry the way you speak about it, I'm all for that. I do not think that we should be given. You see, Barbados has this impression that you could just land in Barbados and walk around till you're ready to go back home, and you're safe. In Trinidad, you might go home in
I hate to
parts.
say it, but that this not the last time, but the last time I went to Barbados, it was very peaceful and nice. But another time I went to Barbados before that, I was staying in St. Lawrence Gap where I witnessed a shootout with drug boats and a policeman. They were trying to ambush a drug boat coming ashore, and policeman got in a scuffle with a Bayesian who was hiding in the bush, and one of them got shot. I think the man hiding in the bush got shot by the police and alerted the drug boat, and the drug boat was pursued by the Coast Guard. And from there, I was sitting on all the other tourists ran for cover, but me being a Trini, I want to see. So I seen traces of bullets flying and thing, and heavy gun battle in the sea.
Live
Then I
entertainment.
went into the next morning, I said, I got to read about this in
Nothing.
the papers. Nada.
Nah, Barbados is very
Eventually
good.
on the
Barbados
radio, we
very
heard
good.
one mention of it on the radio.
No, I
But
hear
that's
the
a good
papers.
point
Yeah.
because that's a good point. These islands do not promote
Yeah.
the
Correct.
crime that is that they're facing in their issue.
Control
Again,
environment.
they control the environment.
Yeah.
So you would never. So if you're in Barbados and you're vacationing, you would never read about that. It
Yeah.
would never
No, but people
disturb you.
complain about that. People complain that some of the things that they thought should be news, even if it's local news, it should be available to the people. I'm not for censorship.
I
I
don't
think
like
that the
censorship.
information
Yeah.
should be out.
But I know two people
I
have
think-
been mugged in Barbados, sir.
But
That's what I recently.
and I know stories because I have friends in Barbados.
It's not
But,
squeaky clean.
but no, it's not. But what I'm saying is, that and I don't want to go down that road too far. But that issue that you just raised about the drug trafficking moving through these countries, we as a region, CARICOM has done a piss poor job of managing our maritime security, and until we as a group of islands, but Trinidad and Tobago could lead from in front. Trinidad and Tobago, we have in Trinidad and Tobago in the Ministry of National Security. It's there. It's been there since Manning. It's called the Maritime Security Wall. We could have actually shut the nation's borders down cold and stuff the containers in the port, end the drug trade, end the gun trade, if we wanted to. And that's a whole other conversation. But if Trinidad and Tobago led, you see all the times the CARICOM people get together and eat a nice plate of pilau with avocado and salad and drink some mobi and pretend that all of we is Caribbean people. We're not taking responsibility for the people that we lead in, and that's why all of that's going on. But I wanted to put into the conversation because Tony was raising the issue just now, and I want to the issue of jobs, job creation as a direct result of tourism. The global travel and tourism sector was responsible for the creation of 7 million new jobs worldwide in 2017, or 1 in 5 of all new jobs created globally, according to a new report by the World Travel and Tourism Council. In 2017, travel and tourism sector impact accounted for 8.3 trillion US dollars contributions to the world GDP, or 10.4% of global GDP. That's massive. 882 billion US dollars investment, 4.5% of total global investment. 313 million jobs, 1 in 10 jobs around the world. 1.5 trillion exports, 6.5% of total exports, or 28.8% of global service exports. Contrast and compare that with Trinidad and Tobago. Who knows? We're talking about Cambridge Analytica. So we're talking about analytics. Social media and the internet has introduced us to the concept that you could track and rank yourself in the world.
Correct.
Trinidad Carnival, for the past 10 years,
It's been declined.
our Google search for Trinidad Carnival has been in a nosedive, whereas Caribana, Mardi Gras, and Rio Carnival keep climbing. Every year they get a better year. Why is it so difficult for us as a people to understand that if the government is not doing the right thing, move the government and put people who will? Don't you agree that it is time we started to take tourism seriously?
Long time. But I think that that they first of all, taking it seriously is not just finance, it's actually branding, marketing, all those things.
A national
None
posture.
of those things are done.
A national posture from the top
None of
down.
those things are done. We have no branding at the moment.
No,
We've had no.
This is what I was saying.
Yeah, there's nothing has been done.
That same tourism,
Nothing.
that same.
But it was just a street fair
That
in
same-
New York
that
City
fair-
where people were promoting each themselves and we not
Right.
promoting Trinidad.
Well, the fair I'm talking about is what countries would use, like in Europe.
Like a travel expo.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? And you go to this thing, I was saying before, you go to this thing and you look at Trinidad's booth. And I'm passing people like Antigua using the Pigeon Point jetty
As their image.
as their image on their
that
at the front.
iconic
Yeah.
image. Yeah.
You know, and then you get down to Trinidad and Tobago's booth, and the thing looks like, Sister Bettel outside there, hang up a line and put some posters on it, and here, look, a few
Maybe
brochures.
they use the same designer as the one who did Maracas Bay.
Quite
And
possibly.
money
but
bet. Our booth costs more than every other booth.
I don't
Exactly.
doubt it for a minute.
Money bet.
It's actually depressing.
Money bet somebody family went over
Yeah.
to payday for
Yeah,
that
it's-
Sister Better line.
and
They don't
I-
use professionals when it comes to anything.
I
They don't
kid you
use
not,
professionals.
it's depressing. I got there, and this is after I tell you, I had to pass all the other booths before you get to Trinidad because it looked like they wanted to pay the least amount of money for any spot that they would get, so they take somewhere near to the kitchen down in the back there, and it's depressing. That's the only way to describe it. And I
Sean,
refuse
did
to
you look at
Trinidad.
you see, Stephen said just now that the board does not have to have expertise in the industry, and I agree with him.
Correct.
But there are specific boards that when you are putting them together, you want to bring people who understand the language of what they're going to be
Correct.
hearing
Yes.
and talking about.
Correct.
So when you raise an issue to the board or to the CEO, and the CEO goes back to the board and say, this is what we're trying to do,
Yep.
they understand. So we could fast track to success.
Correct.
Because you know the problem I have noticed. I've served on 3 state boards, and I've seen what goes on. And what happens often is that somebody doesn't know anything about the subject, and they don't have to know anything about the subject, but they want to micromanage and they know nothing, and that's dangerous. That is a problem. But if you know you're on a board, you have to have the skill to know how to facilitate the professionals,
Exactly.
facilitate,
Correct.
get the people who know what they're doing the support they need and to
Correct.
do their
Let them
jobs.
do it.
And that's
Well,
not
we
what they
come-
do. What they
Yeah.
try to do is wrestle that away from the
But
big
we come full
professionals.
circle, and that's why the
And
last
then-
board collapsed. We're talking tourism, and again, I want to say, who more iconic in Trinidad and Tobago than the first black Miss Universe, Janelle Penny Commission? She should have been. In fact, if you were going to put a non-professional CEO, she shouldn't have been the board chairman. She should have been the CEO. You should
Correct.
have had her
Correct.
tour the
On
world.
point.
Tour the world.
She should have been the point. But apart from that, Philip, how do you go from her to Chin Lee? I still can't make
Right,
that.
I was trying to
I
make the
still can't make that.
correlation.
How,
Right.
how does that work? You go from Jean Penny Commission to Chin
Well,
Lee.
while you're saying that, I was searching Trinidad and Tobago Tourist Board, and I'll tell you why. Because the new tourist board, besides Chinley, which is an obvious job for the P&M boys, the entire board is made up of people who have no clue about tourism. So expect another daughter or son of a P&M financier
Correct.
or friend to be appointed CEO, who will then bring their friends and circle of friends into saying, hey, take this one, get them a post, get them a position.
So you
So
got the job
Charlie
for the
and
boys.
Mary, who know nothing about tourism, gets marketing and PR.
Well, I landed in Trinidad 11 years ago, and of course that was my initiative and my dream to come work for the Ministry of Tourism. So I got off the plane quite happy and anticipating employment, and I have never heard back with 25 years cruise line experience.
Yeah.
I have never heard back from the Ministry of Tourism. As a matter of fact, I was rejected from a job from Hyatt advising me they were taking a local. I said, can you please define a local because I live here, right? So
And the
we,
manager was from America.
right, they rejected me because I wasn't a local per se. So what I'm saying, we are deliberately managing with incompetence.
Yes.
We are deliberately
managing- yeah.
doing it. We have too much resources. Take the joke of every island you land at, you hear steel pan. Let's just take
Yeah.
that little,
Yeah.
Yeah.
take that
Yeah.
little tidbit there.
Correct.
Every island, the ship docks
Yeah.
at, the plane docks at, it
Correct.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Sean will tell you.
And if it's not live,
use
it's
the
painted.
steel pan, the national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago, but yet we don't even try to
Nothing.
promote
It'd be
our
interesting
culture.
that if we actually did an international quiz and asked people where the steel drums
God,
come
that's
from,
yeah. What does
a lot of them would say Jamaica or Barbados.
that's
We have
Correct.
not we've not claimed anything, we've not branded anything.
Correct.
because they
So
don't
we
care about
continue.
it.
No, they're right. They don't care about it.
care about it.
Who is,
Apparently, if you
who is
don't,
the head of tourism now? Which minister?
That's not
You know
Kujo.
something? That's a funny thing.
No,
because-
Shamfa Kujo, she is sports
No,
now.
no,
She's
it's
running and
Dan.
jumping
Oh,
and
right,
skipping.
right.
Which is Mitchell? Which one of them?
Mitchell,
Which one of the
Mitchell.
incompetents?
Mitchell.
Who came from housing, who didn't know what he was
Mitchell,
doing?
it's
The
Mitchell.
point is from the top down, Stephen. You tell me and you're correct.
I have to say something. That minister, to this day, has not met with
Which one of
with
them?
our
Mitchell or Kujo?
the one who's presently there. I have never met him. I'm the vice president of the Tour Operators Association.
See?
We've called for meetings.
How
we've
does that
begged for
work?
meetings. We have never met him or had an exchange with him. They're not interested,
they're not interested there.
in talking to stakeholders.
Let me tell you, if I have to be blunt about it, I figure you know that income stream that comes from oil and gas and that kind of thing, that where they were using Petrotrin as a cash cow and that kind of thing. That's where the money was here. That's what we're interested in.
Right.
Tourism had that kind of money coming in, saying, you know what? Yeah, I don't have enough to teeth.
You know, but
And in tourism, the wealth will spread.
Correct.
That's the problem.
Yes.
The
Correct.
little man on
It
the
trickles
the
down.
little man
Not
will
only
make a
that,
few
but
thousand
not only
US,
that.
right?
Not
Sorry.
only that. No, I just want to say this. That the nonsense that you could get away by micromanaging, because even though they say that the oil and gas industry was this 30, 40, 50% of our economy, it was one little tight spigot that you could have held and controlled
Correct.
where the money went. Tourism, you won't be interested, or every single member of the tourism industry cannot be harnessed and corralled and made to give kickbacks for, you understand what
Correct.
I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah, and you know what we always forget about with the economists and all that. There's something that's hard to measure is happiness. What about happiness? Somebody who imagine tourism. If tourism was a bigger player in Trinidad, people managing their own little micro industries,
Correct.
they are happy people.
Because they're empowered.
They're empowered and they're enjoying. It's better than working in an industrial situation.
You become your
Industrial
own boss.
situations do not promote health or happiness.
Yeah, then you become an
And we have to
entrepreneur.
think beyond money sometimes. When we
Correct.
think beyond money, then maybe money will follow. But Trinidadians need to be
Correct.
happy at what they do. And tourism
Yeah, but-
is a means of at least
But
the
you
micro
raise
enterprises.
the point. I want to tell you something. When Penny Commission, what I watched take place, when Penny Commission realized, you see, I think they appointed her as a pretty face, but they didn't realize that she was a success-driven person. And when she realized that the person that they put to run the tourism company had no idea what she was doing, Penny went hands-on to the point where she fired
Right.
Camille Campbell. When she fired Camille Campbell, she didn't realize that just like her, Camille Campbell was a political appointee. Like Candace Guppy Sobian, who is married to the son of a former PNM Attorney General, the entire board. So when they tried to shame Penny, and Penny was having none of it, they collapsed the board around her. All the people that they appointed, all the PNM appointees, they tell them just resign from the board. Just resign from the board, so that the Newsday, that is owned by a PNM financier, that was an alderman for Diego Martin Regional Corporation, they made him chairman, Steve Castani, could publish tourism board collapses. That's not what happened. The PNM made the PNM members of the board resign to collapse the board to effectively fire Penny. So where are we now? Howard freaking Chinley.
I like the comment that Stephen made about happy, and it goes back to the governance that PEP always promotes. Are these governments for the people? Because, you look at that statement of just being happy.
Yeah.
And we could correct so much issues in this country by just being happy.
Correct.
Right, by the little man
Yeah.
playing reggae music on the side when the tourists arrive.
Yep.
And selling a few $100. He's happy.
Yeah.
He knows every day a ship is docking. He knows tourists are coming into.
But every time you say every day, I'm not happy because I know you all are sold on the cruise ships. I ain't. I want to fill hotel rooms.
Well, either way.
I want to maximize the amount of money you spent. The 8,000 you spoke of about them spending there, I never heard of that because that's a different thing coming to Trinidad. I never, even from talking to stakeholders down there, I've never heard of anybody making that much money off even an overnight stay guest. That's a lot. I don't know if that was a one-off or.
You are a stakeholder.
Yeah.
In the tourist industry. For how long?
Over 20 years.
Over 20
I don't want to reveal my age too much.
No problem at all. But I just want to ask a question. Because you're known in the industry and you know the industry.
And I was once doing well.
So
this is the worst I've ever done.
I watch a banana boat company in Tobago that operated for 25 years, fold up shop and tell us, sorry, we gotta go somewhere.
It is the worst
But
it has ever been in the history of my company.
On a global economy that has grown between 2 and 3% for the past 4 years, our economy is in the toilet. Stick a pin in that. I want to ask you something. This is the tourism board led by Howard Chinley that is supposed to represent and work with stakeholders like yourself. I want you to tell me, I'm going to name the people who are on the board, and I want you to tell me which of these people are currently or have been in any aspect of the tourism industry to say that they are knowledgeable about what is supposed to happen next. Have you ever heard of Avalon Huggins? I know Terence Bagonsing.
I have to admit, I'm terrible with names.
No, no problem at all.
So,
but I know these people, and I know what they do. Terence Bagonsing is hardware. Have you ever heard of Shezri Nesbitt?
No.
Leslie Ann Assey.
No.
Brian Lewis, he's an architect. Devon Seal, a Calypsonian. Shivana Inal Singh, whose father was in charge of the boxing board, so she's in the boxing board now.
I know.
That's your tourism board. Where is the single bright spark among them that could inspire a CEO with a mission and a company, the two tourism companies they've created to go out there and achieve success for Trinidad and Tobago that will redound to your benefit and the country as a whole? Where is that?
I know so little about that board. I will leave the comments to you because I do not know
And that's the point.
anybody on that
and
board.
that's
the point.
And I
And
don't
that's
know
it.
what
Where's
they
the
are.
hotelier? Where's the hotelier?
Right.
Where's the,
And you're
where's,
the
where's the
forefront
car
of this.
rental company owner? Where's the
Correct.
people who have experience in entertainment?
Entertainment.
Restaurateurs, anything like that.
Where are the people who could say they understand a vision for tourism? Why aren't you a choice for that board?
Because I afraid boards now. I was not invited to join the board, but I would be afraid to be on any board right now. It's.
But still, with 20
Name-
years
name-
experience,
name-
you
name
would
some
be
of your
a
competitors.
benefit.
That's a
Name
wasted
some,
asset.
name some of your competitors. Name
That's a
other
wasted-
people that you know in the tourist industry, tour operators, company owners that you know and respect or just know of.
Then none of them have anything to do with the board or anything.
And that's the point.
But if you
Yeah,
were to
yeah.
name, if I needed you to name 10 people, you could.
Hmm.
Yet not one of them.
I've been choosing to be on that board.
Now you see the point, but I just
Your
say
minister knows nothing about tourism. The chairman knows nothing about
I'm yet to
tourism.
meet that minister. That's the
The
strangest
entire
thing.
board knows nothing about tourism.
Mhm.
And since they've all been appointed, since they collapsed the penny board, there's no CEO. The company is not operational. The nation has no plan because all we got from the debacle that collapsed the tourist board is that the CEO that they brought in had no clue. The government was saying to the chairman of the board, give her time to find her feet. Stephen,
I think
would
you think you need to even you'll have jump past a major thing as well, the winding up of TDC
to make these two boards
and the big gap and space of nothing happening
to make two companies.
That
One
still
of the
nothing's happening.
But this is one of the companies I'm talking about. Is the one that Camille Campbell was hired for, and the government is trying to tell you that your house is on fire, but we're sending in a novice fireman. He have a hose and he understand how water works. Give him a chance, because that's what we did with the tourist company of Trinidad and Tobago. Again, a minister that knew nothing, a board that knew nothing, and an unqualified CEO. She herself admitted she needed training. 6 months had passed since her appointment. When you say nothing was done, the board, the chairman of that board, Penny Commission, was not happy that nothing was done. I find it obscene that instead of giving Penny a chance to put that passion to work with tourist stakeholders, we undermined her. We collapsed the board from under her. She's now supposed to fade, and we've created a new board.
Isn't that what we normally do, though? That's not her.
Is that acceptable to you?
It's not acceptable. But I'm saying that's what we normally. Don't be surprised about it. It's because it's the normal thing.
But why don't we seek? I mean, we're talking collapse, failure after failure, decades of mismanagement.
Business 101.
Business 101. Why don't we go to the Barbados? Why don't we go to the St. Martin? Why don't we go to Jamaica and seek the expertise?
Exactly.
What has worked
Michelle,
for you?
Trinidad's
This is a simple collaboration.
Trinidad's port loses $1 billion a year. Trinidad's port loses $1 billion a year, despite the fact that Movie Town is a tenant of the board of the port. That most of Woodbrook and Wrightson Road and all those companies and all those buildings, the Hyatt, the waterfront complex, are tenants of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm telling you, despite that, our port loses $1 billion a year. You're telling me we can hire a professional out of Singapore or Dubai to come and show us how to make money?
Philip, we can go 30 minutes to Barbados and ask them, how do you do this? We're looking at something in our,
I personally wouldn't go to Barbados to ask them. I would go to Costa Rica. Everybody keeps thinking of Trinidad and Tobago as a Caribbean destination, and we are a Caribbean destination, but we are also a very South American destination, and that's our niche. I think where we should be looking at, we pay a lot of money to the Caribbean Tourism Organization that gives us a lot of beach information. We are not really, even Tobago is not really the ideal lie on the beach location in comparison to some of the other Caribbean neighbors. We need to start.
But you think Grand Anse in Grenada should have been allowed to become the #1 beach in the world when we've done what we've done to Pigeon Point? No Man's Land and Pigeon Point are the most beautiful beaches.
Actually, I think Englishman's Bay.
So if you could say that, Stephen.
The condition. I'm saying that there are tons and tons of lie on the beach places.
Michelle Davis coined the
Get
term
over the beach.
on a radio
Get
show,
over the beach.
Deliberate incompetency. Is
Okay.
that Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah.
There are definitely some
yeah.
incompetence, and I'm not. It doesn't really matter to me if whether
If Pigeon
it's
Point's
incompetence.
jetty is the international icon for tourists lie on the beach, surf, sand, sea, sex,
Correct.
how could other countries claim and
What I'm
use it?
trying to say though is that let's get over the beach. We have more. There's more to
Absolutely.
the Caribbean than the
Correct.
beach.
No, we
Correct.
understand
And
that.
then you keep talking about beach and cruise ship and thing like that. Let's get over.
I'm just saying.
There's so much
This
more
conversation,
to
remember,
Trinidad and
they
Tobago.
didn't say take over and run the tourist industry. We have an hour, and in that hour, we're saying these are some of the things that are wrong. These are fast ways to get us to where we could go right.
Understand, yeah.
But if we were to sit down here and sit and plot and chart, the first step has to be to bring in people who understand the tourist industry in Trinidad and Tobago, to get some international advisors from successful countries.
And what do we have to offer that will make us competitively unique? Because as you said, there are
Competitive
areas of
advantage.
Trinidad
Perhaps we
you
should
probably
just visit
don't.
some of the old tourist reports written by foreign consultants. It's been done dozens of times
To death.
before
Mm-hmm.
with
To
lots
death.
of consultants from all over.
To
We
death.
spend lots of money.
Mhm.
But it's all well and fine going and getting a report written. If you don't follow it, you're
Stephen,
wasted
you
on
and I
money.
have a mutual friend who works with a company that offered to build a floating jetty to protect the coral reef in Tobago.
Mhm.
And because they couldn't get them to willingly pay corruption bribes, we've not done it.
But they're very simple solutions. You go and you get some go to one of those concrete companies. You even get them to
The blocks.
to do it as a
Tax write-off. You
a
could do that as a
charity.
tax write-off.
But all you need is some big concrete blocks away on the sides, away, strategically drops them to do the minimum damage, and run rope up and tell anybody who if you're not tied on one of those, you're in trouble. But
No,
you have
but do you
to
know
make
that
a
they're
serious fine.
floating? But they're floating jetties now that you could employ. That in the middle of the ocean for the nylon pool,
Yeah.
you could employ that 1,000 people could dance on. So I'm saying to you that there is technology.
Yeah, you can do it. But I'm just saying that besides that, there's simple
alternative.
things not worth discussing.
Correct.
If you have to have a big discussion
Correct.
You see,
about how
about putting a
that's
piece
it.
of concrete with a rope attached.
It
to
shows you how lost we are.
That's
Right.
it. We're talking about getting people to Trinidad and Tobago for tourism and stuff like that, right? And I keep saying, okay, so we get the people here. Let's assume one morning we get up and we have 10,000 people that want to go to Tobago. Tourists. How are you going to get them across there? On a boat that 9 out of 10 times probably might have some kind of engine issues, or through with a couple of puddle jumpers, an air bridge that functions at maybe 50% of the time. How does that work? We can't get right for locals.
But we can't just. We
Yeah.
just can't continue the debate without saying.
You know?
the Superfast Galicia was doing the job.
Well, there's another discussion
But the
altogether.
Superfast Galicia was doing the job.
Yeah,
and I'm not
understand?
picking and choosing, but I'm saying
Yeah.
in a world that has thousands of countries that require ferries to keep them operational.
Correct.
We can't not be the only country in the world that
That have
can't do
issues.
that thing right.
Correct. And it's not that thing, it's all the
No,
things.
but
That's the
that thing,
problem.
so if you raise it, and I want to say that to get the 10,000 people across from Trinidad to Tobago, you need to make sure that from the top down you have people with a vested interest
Correct.
in making that a reality.
Correct.
A vested interest in the country.
I think we're running out
A
of time.
vested interest
So-
in making the country better, a vested interest in encouraging entrepreneurship, a
Correct.
vested interest in promoting eco-friendly
But it's not just-
environments.
Yeah.
We don't think progressive,
No,
and
it's
that
not
is
just
why
tourist
we.
companies.
Correct.
Stephen should be able, and companies like him should be able to access professionals now
Of course.
in
Yeah.
the service industry to his tourism company.
Correct.
That they're supposed to be able to access
Correct.
things that right now I'm sure you
Don't
get from
forget, I
abroad.
mean, we in the Tour Operating Association, Trinidad and Tobago Incoming Tour Operators Association, there are many people there that have been in business for over 20 years and are well expert at what they're doing and have very, very good ideas, and nobody talks to them. The
So
that's the
Stephen,
point.
you can
there
imagine
right
you
there.
create a
That's the
quick,
point.
a quick symposium. You bring the tour guides, you bring the cruise operators, you bring the carnival stakeholders, you bring the hoteliers, you bring everybody together, you bring Tobago, and you ask the people, bring the glass bottom boat people, get everybody in a space, and let's have a conversation. What works? How do we get it to work better? What doesn't work? How do we fix it? We can start the conversation there.
That's where the conversation has to start.
It has to start.
It has to start from
That's
the
a
beginning.
Stakeholder
Yeah.
A
consultation. but that's
stakeholder
normal.
consultation
That's
symposium.
normal.
Has there ever been something like that in Trinidad?
Lots of them.
Where all of the stakeholders are brought together to have a symposium
Yeah,
on
there are
that?
lots of them. They're
So
a
where
big
the
waste of
out-
time.
where the-
So, you see, and that's it.
I'm just saying, the way you have said it is you bring all the stakeholders. If you bring all the stakeholders, first of all, you have to know which group of stakeholders to talk to about which subject. Because if you get a mass of people in a room and they all talk, you get what we get.
No,
Nice.
I'm
We've had loads of those.
we
had loads of
we
those,
want
and it's a big
guided-
waste of
no,
time.
No, Stephen,
It's
we
too much
want,
talking.
guided outcomes. I want to tell you something. You need to set up councils that understand what you're trying to fix. and those councils have to be made of people.
It's not one
So
big
you could
meeting,
say-
it's lots and lots of small meetings. That's
Absolutely.
what I'm
No,
trying to
I
say.
understand that.
If you decide to have one big meeting, it's a
No.
big waste of time.
Aren't you interested in empowerment on the ground for tourism in the country? Aren't you interested in knowing that you could send positive ripples through the ground? That people who have a vested interest in whatever aspect of the industry could have their problems heard and addressed?
They must, but not. Yeah. You have it done in not as a mass. Because what has happened in the past?
Do the tour guides have somebody to speak for them? Do the hoteliers
Yeah, they
have
do.
somebody to speak for them?
They do.
Okay, so
They
then,
have their groups.
All right, so then if they are comfortable, because what I find is, like you talk to the agriculture company and they find out that 9 out of the 10 people don't agree with the person in charge, and some corruption going on or some bacchanal. You know that.
What the politicians tend to do, because I don't like the way politicians usually heap everybody together and say, we're going to have a consultation. And I've been to these. And every time they can argue, the tour guide association is here.
Noise.
These people are here, people who have
Because
kitchens
it's
there.
not
And you
focused.
put them in a big, that's the point.
It's not
That's the
focused.
point.
You know,
And that's
if
why
you
I said
have a big mass meeting like the politicians
Yeah.
like to have, because they look at the numbers. How
Correct.
many people?
Because it looks good
It's
for
not
them.
about that. This is
For
business.
them it looks
But if
good.
you
not a
guide
political
it,
party.
exactly. But if you are guiding that meeting, but we will come back to that because I think that this conversation has to continue. We have to wrap up. Anthony Defoe, closing
Yes.
comments.
Out of water.
Well,
And we're out of water.
it was a very, very interesting discussion today, I must say. I like a lot of the pointers that you brought up. Definitely things that we will be looking at and even scrutinizing and seeing how best it can be implemented within the actual proposal and plans that we are trying to put forth. And also, you had me going there for a second. I did, with all my scribbles happening here, it's an average between 300 and 1,200 US dollars is the quantification for the spend as far as tourists are concerned. I was just quantifying it into TT, which is around $8,000 if it was
Right,
at
because
the
you
max.
said
Correct.
8,000 US
Yeah, I
per
made a
person,
mistake, so I just wanted to
which
correct
I was
that.
about
Yes.
to migrate.
I just had to correct that because I myself, when I worked the numbers in my head, I said, it's actually sounding kind of strange.
Well, thank you for correcting yourself before I bought my ticket.
Yes, most definitely. But again, I just want to give much thanks for the entire panel that we have. Sean, Michelle, as well as Stefan. Philip, as usual. Thank you very much. Today, Wednesday, 7th August 2019, Plain Talk. Just a quick plug where we have our back to school barrel sale, which is happening this Saturday on the 10th, which is between it's 24 10th Avenue, Barataria, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. And this is 10th Street between 6th and 7th Street. It's 10th Avenue, sorry. Between 6th and 7th Street. Your info line is 347-4737 if you want to get more information on that. So Trinidad and Tobago, don't miss out. For all the parents out there with kids and so on, there's a lot of great deals happening at the Barataria hub office. And again, it's starting from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Yes. So I'm going to leave it there for now. And again, much thanks for all the panel and everyone. Anthony Defoe, Deputy Political Leader. Looking forward for the next Plain Talk.
Sean Sinarine.
Trinidad and Tobago is so well endowed naturally. The mere fact that we haven't leveraged tourism and made use of what God has given us is almost a sin. I've been to places with less than quarter of what we have in terms of natural attraction, natural beauty, anything like you want to name like that. And they make do with it to the point that their income streams, is in the millions of US dollars per year. A good example of that is probably Antigua.
Yes.
Antigua is basically beaches. That's it. And their income from cruise ship arrivals alone, which is my forte, so I can speak to that, is something like 23 or 24 million US a year. For a small island, for us that might be chump change, but for a small island like that, that's huge business. And it's not like there's a lot of expenditure in terms of infrastructure.
Yes.
It requires their infrastructure. Their biggest outlay in terms of infrastructure for cruise ship arrivals is docking and facilities. That's it. The rest is tourists enjoying the beach, buying beers, eating food, spending money. That's it. Then you compare islands like that to somewhere like Tobago, Nyland Pool, Coral Reef, the potential for ecotourism. We have, I think it's either birds or bees, some of the rarest in the world across there. You know, it's amazing in terms of what Tobago has compared to the other islands that we have never leveraged. And for all my years in this business, after seeing, being around, literally being around the planet a few times, I cannot for the life of me understand why we've never leveraged it. And just listening to Mr. Broadbridge speak here, just reinforces the fact that to get anything done in Trinidad is almost like pulling fingernails. It is. I mean, it's not something that is money intensive to the point where you must invest billions and billions of dollars. It's not something that needs a lot of. It needs a lot of effort. It needs a lot of work. I understand that, but basic business sense is going to tell you how to work around that. Get the right people in the right position, and you're good to go. It's going to take a lot of work. Nobody's saying it's not going to be done. It could be done in 2 years or 3 years' time. But you have a short, medium, and long-term plan, just like any other business, and you're good to roll. Perhaps one day, when the PP gets in the government, we may be able to pursue that. But until then, all you can keep doing is plugging away at it.
Stephen.
Well, like I say, after 20 years, I'm getting a little tired. But I still convinced that Trinidad, even over Tobago, has amazing ecotourism potential. I say Trinidad over Tobago because I find Tobago is always pushed, and people are very short-sighted on what Trinidad has to offer. Not because I operate here, because I also operate in Tobago, but Trinidad is a world record for leatherback turtles coming up on the beach. That's a phenomenon alone that nobody talks about. Tobago doesn't even have a fraction of what Trinidad has. Yet we push everybody to Tobago. Tobago doesn't have a Nariva swamp. They don't have howler monkeys bowling at you. They don't have capuchin monkeys. We don't have flocks of macaws. They don't have flocks of scarlet ibis and carney and flamingos. And Trinidad is an amazing location, and we need to start also recognizing there instead of Tobago is a wonderful place, and it doesn't even get enough attention, but much less Trinidad, So if you think things bad in Tobago, they're worse in Trinidad as far as like the marketing and attention it's gotten, and there's a lot of potential. Unfortunately, everything seems to be politics in Trinidad all the time. I'm not into the politics. I want things to work. If PNM call me tomorrow to do this exact same thing you're doing, or UNC or whoever, I'll go in. This is not politics. I fed up of politics. I want things to work, and whoever called me, I dare. It's not a political thing for me.
Stephen Broadbridge, your closing comments is why I asked you, why aren't you on the board? When you were speaking about the flocks of macaws and the capuchin monkeys, if I wasn't in Trinidad and Tobago, I'd be calling my travel agent to book a ticket. Michelle Davis.
Having been in the cruise industry for over 25 years, and each time I visited every island, a sadness came upon me, because I would think of Trinidad immediately. I always think of what could be the potential of this country, and that we have neglected it for so long. And I believe tourism is an option that we should seek in this country. We should look at viable options, and that is what the Progressive Empowerment Party is about. Looking at viable options for the people of this country and making this country a better country.
What a show. Fills me with hope. Unlike Stephen, I don't hate politics. I understand politics as a tool to get things to work just the way he wants it. And I know that we have to fix the politics to fix the country, because what we continue to do is make random noise policy on the hoof, government by VAPs, and we're going nowhere. I made 2 notes of 2 things that came out of the show: Michelle, potential; Stephen, happiness. And those 2 things are so indicative of what we should be: a happy people living up to our full potential. Can we get there? Stephen's right. We need to get the old politics out of the way. Now, you wouldn't want me to use him for that endorsement, but he's absolutely correct. If the PNM or the UNC wanted to have shows like this, he's right to go. I'd join him. I'd join them. We are doing this because they're not. That there's not a conversation happening on the ground about food production and tourism and the other issues that we're going to raise as to how we should be diversifying this country. Satish Ramsaran, the man behind PEP Studios and PEP Media that made this show possible, Baxter Cuthbert and the rest of the crew, I thank you, and I will keep thanking you for helping us bridge the gap and uncover the media blackout. I think that a lot was done in this show. I think there's going to be a part 2 to this show to get deeper into it and get some more meat off the bone. But until then, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago. This has been Plain Talk.